Hey, welcome to Watermelon Parade. Let's have some fun. Boy, howdy, do I love Mob Psycho 100. How he just mobs all those psychos. Hundreds of them. I'm kind of ashamed to admit that I got into it a bit late when the anime first came out, in 2016, because I was already a fan of One's work at the time. I was really into One Punch Man when Yusuke Murata was doing it because I loved iShield 21 and I just love his art. And obviously One's storytelling really appealed to me in it. And so I was hyped when the anime came out for One Punch Man a few years ago. And I had heard of Mob Psycho 100 and it even kind of started it, but then I unfortunately wasn't immediately dragged in, and life stuff happens, as it does, and there's still so many things that I love that I haven't finished because life? So when the anime came out in 2016, I got obsessed and I immediately read all the manga. I was reading it as the final chapter came out. I cried, I laughed, I loved it. And so when the new season came out, I even went to see it in theaters for the premiere of the first episode. Because the anime really does something I love, which is great characters mixed in with great visuals. And most of the time, stories that I absolutely fall in love with are the ones that have that combo. And even just reading the manga, One's art style, and just seeing how much he grows while drawing it was really inspirational to me as an artist, and just that you can create wonderful things without even having those great skills. And it reminded me of a lot of things I had been told by art teachers, is that, especially regarding comics, is you don't need to be a great artist to make comics. You just need to be a great storyteller. And One is definitely a great storyteller. Anyway, I wanted to make this video to gush about Mob, because I love Mob. I love Shigeo Kageyama. He's so good and right, and I love his whole story about self-acceptance. So, this first picture I'm working on is inspired by Mob's inner struggles and how he's constantly fighting with himself. He's a kid that can blend into any scene, but he wants to stand out. He has things that make him special, but he doesn't necessarily like them. And there's a constant back and forth in the series with Mob and 100%. Both are him, the persona he's formed through trauma that he's experienced, and the emotional part of him that he's locked up. Despite trying his best, he's still a kid, and no matter how much you try to bury or bottle something up, there's always an overflow. I remember when I was dealing with depression as a child, I didn't understand it, but I tried my best to be okay and not let things affect me. When it got to the point that I'd break down and people asked me, what was wrong? It was always never something specific. It was just a plethora of small things. Small injustices, small hurts, small stress. But since I never let myself feel those things, it always whiplashed in my face later. The overflow ends up creating outbursts, both good and bad for Mob, like 100% anger, 100% sadness, or recently 100% courage. There's a need for release of the emotion that he's built up, and that's characterized with the percentage going up. Mob exists in a disassociative state most of the time, which creates his demeanor that seems like he doesn't care, or is seemingly unaffected by his surroundings. But we learn throughout the story how affected Mob can be from his surroundings, and even, especially in the recent Mogami arc, we see Mob change as he would be without his support system, and how that leads Mob to realizing that people can change. And I love this boy so much because he takes a very negative lesson that he can become a bad person. With the right circumstances, he can become somebody that he does not want to be. And he flips the narrative right on Mogami's face and just says, well, if I can change to be worse, you can change to be better. And he does the same with Asagiri, and he did the same with Teru in the previous season without even realizing it. And it's just beautiful. This boy and how he thinks is just really, really good and beautiful and sweet, and it's just the nice little healing that you need. And it's amazing because despite having so many issues with himself, he's a kid that just has this remarkable ability to heal the people around him. And so that's where the inspiration for this next picture comes from. Mob and his growth throughout the story. Even as a young kid, he takes the initiative to make the steps to become a better person. And he really cares about that deep down. And he goes to Reagan, and Reagan gives him really good advice for being such a total con man. And he's in middle school, and he hears about the Body Improvement Club. And he jumps on that, which narratively is a great flip that one's done. But also story-wise, character-wise, Mob just, any second he has to be a better person, he will take. And I think that's what's really valuable about him. Of course, a lot of these feelings are brought upon his desire to be liked, which is a very relatable desire that people have. He's not popular, he likes a really popular girl, and he's not particularly good at anything besides his Esper abilities. And after learning that his childhood crush is not interested in them anymore, he loses that sense of value. And that's a pretty sad thing, because as a child and before the incident with Ritsu, Mob is a fairly confident child that is happy with his abilities and the way that he can make other people smile with it. But after accidentally hurting his brother and Tsubomi no longer seeming to be interested in him, he ends up with this skill that nobody cares about except for Reagan, who's obviously a con man. The age of 10 to 14 is a very important, formative time in a kid's life because it's when they decide what their passions are. And Mob gets the lesson that just because he's good at being an Esper doesn't mean it's something he's passionate about or something that was really encouraged by the people around him. His brother puts up a wall, and his people at school are been there, done that, seen that, you know? So, like, most of his classmates already know that he's an Esper, and it's just something that they don't care about because Mob himself doesn't stand out. What Mob does care about during this time is being popular, being somebody that people like, and that leads him down a surprisingly healthy path of just improving himself. It's not like those high school movies where you see that makeover and all of a sudden the unpopular person is super popular. He just works to become a better person. And by doing so, he discovers a lot of things about himself and about others. He starts learning to take care of himself better throughout the series, and like hanging out with his friends or standing up for himself. And he starts learning to accept himself in a lot of places that he didn't really accept. Like, he couldn't accept his emotions because he knew how tied they were to his powers, and his fear of ever hurting somebody was way too powerful for him. So he locked them up. But throughout the series, we keep seeing him make these breaks, hit 100%, and feel his emotion. Each one is this step further for him to grow and accept himself even more. And also what's beautiful is how the people around him really encourage this and really respect him for those growths that he makes. It's such a positive series, man, and it just makes you feel so good about yourself. And good for Mob as he grows. Mob's all those psychos! So there's a lot more I could talk about the series, but I just wanted to focus on Mob and his character and his self-acceptance and how I really love it. So have a great time. liking and subscribing if you so please, and leave a comment telling me what you think about Mob. He's so good. How can you not love him? But I digress. Just tell me what you feel about him.